I've been working on a piece of music theatre about a woman called Bridget Cleary. It's a true story. She was a woman living in Tipperary in Ireland in the 1890s, and a terrible thing happened to her. She was burned alive by her husband and her family because they believed her to be a fairy changeling. I was really sort of moved by the contemporary resonances that I felt the story has with violence against women today, and particularly in relation to religion and in relation to superstition. And I thought that it would resonate with particularly women. So I'm working on a piece of music theatre about her life, and I've been using my residency here at Snape to explore the music and how it might interact with some dialogue that I've been working on, and to really see what the piece might look like when it's on its feet. So what we were working on this week mostly was the beginning of the piece, and the piece begins, at least how we're exploring it at the moment and what I've written musically, is that we start sort of in a liminal space. We're not quite in the world of Bridget yet. We're not quite in a physical location. It's something more figurative. It's something a bit more sort of fairy tale-y. And we start with the singing of a round. Are you a witch, or are you a fairy, or are you the wife of Michael Clary, which is actually a nursery rhyme still sung in Ireland today.
With fairy fever, are you a witch, or are you a fairy, or are you a witch, or are you a fairy, are you yourself, or are you a deceiver? Have you been knocked with fairy deceiver? Have you been knocked with fairy fever? Are you a witch, or are you a fairy, or are you the wife of Michael Clary? 'Cause if you won't let them in, hey ho, with fairy fever, fairies knocking at your fairy. 'Cause if you won't like them very, 'cause you, 'cause if you, 'cause if you, Michael Clary.
So there were 12 people here with me for the residency, all collaborators in different ways. So my main collaborator for the residency would be Tineke Craig, who's a theatre director and a good friend of mine. And then Martin Bassendale was the movement director. Alan Flanagan was dramaturg, writing support. And then we had two musicians, Nicola Lyons and David Delar, a fiddle player and guitarist. And we had 7 actor-singers, which in themselves they were an amazing resource. They all had different backgrounds and had different experiences, so we had a real wealth of opinions and approaches to how you develop character. Before coming, I had most of the main musical themes and most of the songs written, and I had ideas for scenes in between songs. I knew what had to happen to get us to the next song, because that's kind of how I've written the piece, is that the main plot points happen in song, and most of the story is told through song. So what we did was Tinu, the director, she ran a lot of exercises where the actor-singers improvised as these characters and worked on backstory and worked on the physicality with Martin. One exercise that was incredibly useful was something called the 24-hour exercise, where we set up the world of the show in the concert hall, and we put, the church over there and the pub here and everybody's cottages around here. And Tinu would say, it's 5 a.m, it's 6 a.m, it's 7 a.m, and in those 5 minutes, which represented an hour, the actor-singers would be in character doing what that character would be doing at that time. And loads of amazingly useful stuff came out of that, even physically, just that, one of the characters has a bad hip. I was like, oh, okay, thanks. I didn't know that. Well, I know that about her now, and I know I've written that in. And then one of the characters, one of the women, had loads of children, had a new baby. She basically didn't leave the house for 24 hours. So that's really helpful, for me as a writer to know that. And then you start to see the interactions between the actors. And we moved the scene into the pub, and they started chatting to each other. And we asked Nicola and Dave to play some tunes as though they were in the pub. And that sort of changed the mood and meant that different conversations happened. And I was sort of, watching all of this, making notes, writing a lot of it down, and a lot of it will make it into the second draft, little quirks of characters, and really sort of brought the world alive. So the collaborators have been absolutely crucial in deepening and enriching the world of this show.
Have you seen Bridget?
Mrs. Cleary,
The woman with the wild ways.
I've not seen her.
No one's seen her.
She's not been seen these last 3 days.
When the song Trouble Always Comes to a Woman Like That starts out of the round, and it becomes a little bit more concretized. We're a bit more in a real place. We're in the village. This woman has gone missing and people are gossiping about where she might be, what might have happened to her, and we're learning about everything that was strange about this woman and her relationship with her husband and her habits of going to visit the fairy ring.
Trouble always comes to a woman like that.
From that, the people on stage who are in the song, not quite specific characters, but more acting like a chorus and acting like an ensemble, they then become the characters of the piece, the actual family, Bridget's family, and they start to set up the pub. And we have this opening number of Ballyvadley, which is introducing the township where Bridget lived, and her and her husband Michael are coming back to Ballyvadley. They've been living in the big town of Clonmel, which is not a big town, but relative to Ballyvadley, it's a big town. They've been there 7 years. They got married in Clonmel, and 7 years later they're moving back to Ballyvadley, and the family are all excited to see them, excited in some cases to meet Michael, haven't met him before, and they're setting up for a celebration, and that's what the song is.
There are towns all over the world where I dream of living to find a new beginning in the new world, where a young girl can thrive. And it was not in my heart to ever come back here again with a man to have a hold now, to a father growing old now, but I've time still.
Out of the song we move into a scene where we meet these people for the first time, and not only do we meet these people for the first time and learn about the characters and their relationships, but we're also introduced to the idea of the fairies. And the fairies in Irish folklore are a very specific set of beliefs. It's not like English fairies. And so these characters are really steeped in these beliefs, and they start to talk about it in the scene, and they start to have a bit of conflict because they believe various things, and some of them believe it more than others. And this culminates in the local Shanachie, Jack Dunn. Shanachie is a storyteller. It culminates in him singing his song, which tells a story of a child who was stolen away by the fairies and replaced by a changeling.
Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, sung me by my mother, of some little child the fairies took, put in his place another. Night and day this baby cried, and would not be relieved, shrinking smaller by the hour, no matter the gallons he'd eat. When his mother cried to God above, show me the way to soothe my babe, the sound that came to make reply rose from the place where the little babe lay. Follow the river back to the stream, underneath the hawthorn tree. There you'll find your baby boy, stolen away by the fairies, herein replaced by the fairies, stolen away by the fairies. husband this tale she did tell, and begged to call a priest. No priest nor doctor she did call, to have this child released, but called for a woman of high renown, who knew the fairy ways, who came with pockets full of herbs, and ordered the fires to blaze. And there she lay, the changeling boy, flat on his back upon the grate. The flames grew higher and higher until all of the walls began to shake. She said, "There goes the changeling, quick as the wind, up above the chimney hole. And here in my arms, sweetly asleep, is the child you know as your own. The child the wicked fairy stole, the child you know as your own." Lend me your ears and I'll sing you a song, sung me by my mother. Some little child the fairies took, put in his place another.
The week really was a process of letting go for me, because the piece had been living, just with me for over 2 years. And it was a profound moment when I taught one of the songs to the group and had them sing it back to me for the first time. And it was really quite moving, and it made me, realise that this was really happening. But also, of course, it was a challenge for me to really hand over to Tinu, the director, who was essentially running the week, and to trust her. I mean, I heard a really good piece of advice about collaboration, which is that, the two main aspects of it are choosing your collaborators well and then trusting them. And so, it was really a process of learning to trust. And the best thing for me to do was to sit back and watch and learn. And there were some interesting moments when the actors, kind of had thoughts about characters that I maybe didn't agree with, or felt like they were taking it in a different direction. And at first that's a bit frightening. And then actually, I think through the week I realised that no, it's really great, and it's thrilling, and it's important to keep open and keep flexible, and the piece isn't done until it's done. And the more kind of input that I can get on it, the richer it's going to be. I do think that it's important to keep my artistic voice quite strong, and also remember that this is my interpretation of this story. It's not a true, historically accurate retelling. It's my interpretation. There are things about the story that I have amplified, things about the story that I have left out, because I am trying to tell a particular version of the story. So I think one of the challenges going forwards will be to take everything that the collaborators brought during this residency, which was incredible, and to learn from that and incorporate that into the piece, but also reconnect with why I'm telling the story. I think the opportunity to explore and experiment as an artist is crucial, and unfortunately very often we don't have the time or the space or the resources to do it. And so often creatively you don't get the chance to take risks and to try things that might not work, or might work in a way that you weren't expecting, and open yourself up to that. And so I think opportunities like this to come and spend a week at Snape without that pressure of an outcome, they're really unusual, and I think they're really precious for artists. And I know I get really excited every time I get to come here, because it just represents like just the freedom of playing and creating, and that sort of lovely, pure feeling that you got when you were a child and you started to make music or whatever your art form is, of just doing it for the joy of it and the surprise of it. And it's really rare, and I really appreciate that Snape offers that to us as artists.